All right, so one of the conversations that we just reviewed was the need for this open data spec. David Metter has been chairing a committee on what we're calling the ADF 2.0 spec. We started it in November of last year, and I won't steal any of David's thunder, but it has been a pain in the ass to get the vendor community to care. Let me say that again. People that we know and love to care. So David, give us a quick minute to update, where are we with the ADF 2.0 spec and what's our goals?
Yeah, so Brian's right. It's like herding psychotic cats that are highballing. I mean, seriously. It's, I love our industry, but trying to get anybody to agree on anything and then for them not to complain about it afterwards is nearly impossible. But we're working very diligently, and we've got really smart people that are in it. And I'll tell you, the thing that probably gets me the most excited is that the CRM vendors are all participating. Mm-hmm. But most of the CRM vendors are participating. There's one that I will not call out that might be here. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. But I think that overall everyone is engaged. And so our hope is that, we're so close to the finish line on this deal. And the reason that I raised my hand to help champion this was because I thought that within our company at Urban Science, because we have our hands in so many of the pieces of this, but we're kind of Switzerland, we thought that we had the best opportunity, once the spec is done, to be able to get it implemented and executed well on the behalf of the people who need it the most, and that's the dealers. So I am excited because what's going to happen is when we get the spec done, we're going to turn it over to dealers like Peter and others who have raised their hands and said, yeah, let me do the final kind of look and feel. It's not a bunch of vendors that are going to say, yeah, we're doing this. It's dealers. Once that's done, then we're going to be able to put it into execution. So.
And think about this. The current ADF spec was written in 2000. Think of all the things that have changed, the conversation of attribution, social media, all the digital retailing. Imagine a spec where a digital retailing tool sends a lead into the CRM and you could trigger complex workflows because you have granular data on where that consumer was taken through the process. And you'll see from my presentation this afternoon is that dealers have been using the CRM to inspect their marketing investments, and this is also blinded, being blinded by the ADF spec. One of the interesting thing is, and I'm kind of excited to twist your heads at the end of the day, I decided to pick one of the dealers here to do a little data review. So let me just give you a little teaser. A dealer in this room was very happy, I think, about their AdWords campaign. But when I looked at the data, it would be $3,000 a retail sale based on a 10% closing ratio. $350 per sales opportunity. At a 10% close rate, that means someone in here, because they don't have the right data, are making poor marketing decisions. It kind of supports what Chip said yesterday, is that we have to rethink or reallocate how we measure and execute our marketing messages. So stay tuned. This afternoon will be a really fun time. But the person won't be named because ignorance is bliss. And but I will tell them personally one-on-one after the conference. So let's talk about lead handling. I wanted to have a short conversation about this because it bothers me as I travel around the country, we are still, the exact conversations when I walk into a dealer is like, we're having a problem with our BDC. Brian, what's the right BDC pay plan? I can't retain people. I can't recruit people. My lead handling sucks. I have some stores that are closing at 3 or 4%. I have some stores that are closing 15%. I have no idea, but it's big money, right, when we come down to it. Kevin, I'm going to start with you. You don't have BDC at the Weiler Auto Group, is that correct?
That's correct, and that's why I question you putting me on this panel, because I don't have a BDC.
That's right. So, Kevin, how many people here have BDCs? Okay, so I think Kevin is the second smartest person that I know in the industry. Peter's number one. No, I don't rate like that. They're in my top 10. But Kevin has been a leader in this industry. He's an educator. He's spoken almost at every digital dealer. He's always challenged dealers to really evolve. And Kevin, why did you make the decision that the BDC model wouldn't work for Weiler?
Sometimes, I think in life that the most difficult decision is the right decision. And we felt with BDC that we wouldn't be giving the best experience to our shopper. So we went cradle to grave. We've stayed that way from beginning to end, because the number one thing we run into is that when someone calls in, they want to get some questions answered. And we weren't able to do that in a BDC environment. It was all about selling the appointment. But the other thing is I felt like we were just exchanging one problem for another. I can't get our people to pick up the phone or answer leads. But, I could probably hire someone at minimum wage off the street that would care a hell of a lot more about selling that car. And we do service BDC, I'll throw it out there, and we have the same issues. It's high turnover. Can we get people to care? But on sales, we didn't want to pursue that route. So then the bigger question is, how do we get them to do that, and can we do that effectively? And the way we've done it is that we have an intense focus on training. We have a dedicated training center. Every single salesperson, every single sales manager in our group completes training on how to work the internet. You have zero choice, and every single person in our organization works those opportunities. And after years of training, we've got it down that we're less than a 5-minute response time, no games, and it's working great for us.
Great. And Kevin, would you care to share approximately on the group what type of lead to sale ratio, if it's a sales opportunity? Do you share those information, those numbers?
Looking
ranges?
for overall closing rates?
Yeah,
I mean,
closing.
we're in the 15 to the low 20s, depending on which point.
Great. Lauren, how many stores are in the group?
23.
And every store performs almost exactly the same, right?
Not at all.
Okay, so in your organization, are you BDC, are you Cradle Gave, or a mixture? What are you seeing out
Well, they
there?
make it fun. Pretty much every store has its own process and structure in place, and they tend to change it, every month or every couple months.
Man, that's the funny, I've never heard that before.
Keeps it interesting.
So here's Kevin with absolutely a rigid process, and in your organization, the general manager pretty much decides how things are going to happen.
Yeah.
So how do you, as the marketing manager for this dealer group with 22 stores, how are you supposed to make any sense of the marketing return on investment if there's no consistency on how sales opportunities are being followed?
Yeah, I mean, it makes it very complicated, and one of the biggest issues is end of the month. Those guys, like you said, are looking at those CRM reports, and they're coming to me and trying to make decisions off of that, and I have to be like, pump the brakes. Let me look at the KPIs that I can actually measure, that I have a little more control over. So I've come up with this whole kind of massive report of what am I getting from my third-party lead providers? What are the metrics that I can kind of benchmark across all three of them? Of course, that's not easy either when some of them provide certain metrics that others don't. But then I'm looking at, I am taking account what's in the CRM, but you have to take that with a grain of salt, because it's only as good as what's put in there. And I have some scary instances where I go in and I see that there aren't processes in place, and there aren't anybody holding the dealerships accountable for how are we marking this up? What are we marking it as? And phones, don't even get me started there. That's terrifying to me.
Well, there we go. Cassie, could you please fix that for Lauren? Okay.
Right.
We have a doctor in the house. David, Urban Science came out with an interesting product. I wanted to bring it up because I think it's fascinating. I've worked with the Maury's Auto Group who's using this. Would you all agree that if you have a BDC, you probably have hundreds of leads that are active? Wouldn't it be great to know how many of those leads already bought a car? Meaning, wouldn't it be great to be able to mark them and say, stop wasting your time going after, maybe move them to a service campaign or some other campaign. David, talk about, when we talk about lead handling, how is your product actually helping dealers be more efficient with their resources?
Well, I think that all of us spend a lot of time, effort, and money chasing opportunities that no longer exist, right? And it was when I was back in the dealership, when we had 65 dealerships at Mile One, we were focused intently on our success, but we were always very interested to see what was happening with everything else. And so I think what is unique about our data is that it can overlay and say, look, you said 15% closing ratio at your dealerships, right? It would be great to know that there is another 18% of those consumers that touched all of your stores in some way, shape, or form. They're just not in market anymore. Like they bought a car yesterday, or they bought a car 3 days ago. And to be able to suppress that and then spend that time, money, and effort on the opportunities that still exist, it makes you so much better. It makes you so much more competitive in your marketplace.
And one of the other things that, again, and the reason why I do these, panels is because I want to challenge people to think and then use the time later to ask these questions. But here's David, and you don't like to sell on stage, so I'm just going to help you for a minute, because I love to promote great products. The most important thing, in addition to the saving time, is to know which of the dealers in your market also got that lead and sold it, and break that out by same brand and different brand. Meaning, if I'm a Ford dealer in a market and I'm closing at 15%, would it blow your mind that 30% of your leads were also submitted, those same people were submitted to ABC Ford down the street, and they closed them? Meaning, do you understand what that data does? It tells you where your sales leaks are. David, talk a little bit about that. What is the wow thing that dealers are finding out of not just cleaning up their BDC, but how come this lead was in my CRM and they also submit a lead down the street and this guy's crushing it?
Yeah, it's funny because everybody instantly goes to, well, it gives me the opportunity to grade lead providers. The way I look at it is that it gives me the opportunity to look at sales performance and what's going on in the sales showroom floor, my individual sales performance. Remember when call tracking came out? We started listening to calls, like we just buried our head. It was like, oh my God, this is the worst thing I've freaking ever heard. It was because you heard a salesperson talking to a customer. This is almost exactly like that. You're getting an opportunity to see a salesperson and their ineffectiveness with the body of work that they've been given. Right?
Yeah.
And if you can do that and you can make changes, it makes it for training purposes. Think about your training organization and how effective they are. If you could give them one more tool to become even more effective, I think that's where you can really have a game-changing opportunity within the store.
And since some stores, maybe no one here in the room, have a problem with people fudging the data in the CRM, one of the other interesting things is the data shows the highest abusers that are burning through leads. Let me explain. They were assigned to a person. Magically, they're not in market, they're not in market, they're not in market. It was and yet they bought a car from the competitor right down the street. Do you understand it cuts really through the bullshit as well?
No, don't say. I'll tell you. I am non-for-profit ADF 2.0. That's what it is.
David, what is the product called, by the way?
It is for one OEM. It's called Traffic Conversion Analysis for General Motors, and for kind of the mainstream other OEMs, it's Traffic View.
Traffic View. Great. Peter. Yes. Thanks for jumping up. This way everyone can see you. We don't have to, who's that guy? What's the biggest challenge, Peter, you see in your stores handling leads properly?
I think it's the expectation that we have that 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 10 is the right way to talk to the clients. These scripted responses are probably one of the worst things we could do. The person is not anymore ready to talk at day 3 or any less ready at day 5. There's no intellect, no prognosis behind its application of that time frame. We just did it because the OEM told us and we thought the CRM had us in the right mentality. We have to look based on an impression scale. So the same way you see the same impression on Facebook for $2.99 for a Q50, what's the difference if you saw it in an email? There actually is no difference, and that's the moment of inflection that you're supposed to communicate with your client, and that's the frequency that should be qualified. But without the right spec or without the right integration, you don't know when my full-fledged dealer.com output for digital services is actually communicating with my CRM at the same time or indifferently. There's no synchronicities for when we try to communicate to our clients. And we don't know when they're even doing it. We're not even tagging it. And then the CRMs can't even absorb that data backwards and say, this guy read this email or didn't. Very few of them support that. This guy saw this Facebook ad or didn't, or guess what, hasn't done anything. So why don't we switch him to a phone call only cadence or a message follow-up because we have them opted in. None of that is working together.
And that's why companies like Outsell built their platform, because the CRM couldn't handle those signals, right? And so Outsell is saying, hey, they opened the email and they engaged with this, Facebook ad, called it, meaning like it's a whole separate thing. So obviously I'm passionate about ADF, and I'm telling you, one of the biggest areas of potential disruption would be somebody who clean slates a new CRM from scratch and just really supports not only a richer data spec, but more intelligent data signaling, right? In every other industry, for a few $100 a month, you can buy marketing intelligence tools, right, that work with Salesforce. Hey, they opened your email. Hey, they clicked on this ad. And it triggers an entire customer follow-up. We don't have any. We have no signaling in the largest CRMs on, in a more completely guided way.
Hey, Brian, can I add to that?
Sure.
You know what's interesting is in 2011, I gave a talk at Digital Dealer. It was called the Apple Store Approach to Vendor Integration. It was an open API push, and like nobody showed up. Seriously. No, I mean there were some people who showed up, but not many.
They were just your friends.
And so when I see, yeah, right. It was like Cass and like 3 other people, and my wife was one of the 3. But when I see the Fortellis piece, like that becomes the promise. Salesforce, nobody had to go and build a new Salesforce. Salesforce decided one day to make a change, and guess what happened? They allowed all of these really awesome companies to come in and integrate. And guess what Salesforce did? It grew exponentially. So if somebody would get their heads out of their butts and say, oh my gosh, we could do this and we could follow that same path within the automotive industry, like all of this would go away.
Peter, at the Warren Henry Group, how many stores are there?
11 brands, but 6 DMS-A's.
Okay, and how is lead handling structured there?
Very, very ineffectively in most cases.
Is there a standard ineffective way across the group, or is, like Lauren, every GM's making their own?
We have a centralized BDC, so we're pretty good at managing the leads, but the connection rate is a little poor because of the call tracking issues. We don't have a call tracking provider. So we're moving into that.
Okay.
And it's because of that, because it's not measured yet. So we have a new operation roles within the dealership, so we're switching a lot of the responsibilities. But we haven't brought to attention, how many times does it take to call our dealership, or how long are people waiting on hold? And if they are on hold, does that extension forward back into this one so the BDC can help? But if they're calling if their car is ready, and then the BDC calls the same service advisor that they just came from and send them back to the same voicemail, then you have that endless loop of pissed off clients. So we've seen a lot of that. I've listened to way more phone calls than I could even remotely be capable of doing anymore. So you can't listen. We do 127,000 minutes a month in phone call traffic. There's only 46,000 minutes a month, so it's not.
I
even
lost
possible.
you on the math, but keep on going.
So we need scoring. It needs to be done in a more collective way, and if that's the most important lead channel we have, we need to start there. For sure.
Kevin, you guys have an unbelievable, probably I think the best training facility that I've seen at a dealer group. So you've heard from Lauren, you've heard from Peter, that these are profitable groups that just have inconsistent and broken processes in place, which throws off everything else, even profitability. What's the difference at the Weiler Group? Is it just a pure leadership thing, or is it something else that's allowing you to have a very consistent across multiple stores and brands? It seems like the Holy Grail. Would anybody like that in their dealer group?
Yep.
Consistent? Okay, what is it?
Yeah, we really take a different approach, and that is we sell, we don't tell. And by that, we don't come into the dealership and I point at you and you and you and say, this is the way we're going to do it, damn it, I don't care if you understand, it's the standard approach. We really take the time to educate our people as to why we're doing. And just as much as you go to these conferences like DMSC, believe it or not, we're doing that all the way down at the salesperson level at our stores. We're talking to them about digital marketing. We're talking about the shopping behavior online, because we want to empower them and educate them to understand why we're doing the things we're doing. And that's why we're getting the buy-in from our people. The other thing, too, I'll share with you is that to improve, and I steal this from the Navy SEALs, you have to be brutally honest with yourself. And the big pushback we always got was our salespeople are too busy. They don't have enough time to do all these phone calls and handle all these forms. And the biggest purveyors of that were our sales managers. And we literally, in our last training last month, if any of you heard of Glassdoor.com,
Yeah.
where you can review your... I brought up the reviews for Jeff Weiler, and the common one from salespeople was, good job, but a lot of downtime, not much to do.
That's
And I'm
awesome.
like, gee, weren't you guys too busy to make the phone
awesome.
calls and the forms? But when we're brutally honest with ourselves,
Good.
it's because we just don't necessarily want to do the things we know we need to do to be successful.
Lauren, at your auto group, has bringing in outside trainers for a couple weeks, a couple months, done anything to move the needle? Anything that you've seen, at least in one or two of the stores, that are working to improve and implement a consistent lead handling process?
I definitely wish that, bringing them in every couple months was enough, but it's not. There needs to be a frequency. I kind of push back on my vendors a lot in that regard and saying, I need you to be in not only my sales managers, but my general managers' face. I need you to be on their calendar. I need to hold you accountable to make sure you're there, because there's just not enough frequency with it. I mean, you get, and who knows if even the whole sales team was there that day. So maybe you get a couple guys, and then and they turn over between the next training.
Right.
So no, there's not enough. And we have some corporate trainers, at a high level that go out to the stores too. But I think really where we could get an efficiency play is, what Metter's talking about in terms of finding out who are the salespeople that we really need to talk to, instead of just trying to do a blanket approach to the whole team, because we're just not getting there enough anyway. So let's really get more efficient and effective and just work with the ones that we know are kind of the low-hanging fruit, or the ones that need the most help.
One of the interesting things that I find, and you probably are guilty of it if you're a store manager or an owner, it's like, hold on. You're telling me now I have to do call tracking, so I have to start paying Car Wars, and then I need Traffic View, and are you telling me that I need to be spending $5,000 or $6,000 a month just for the tools to make sure that my leads are being handled properly? And the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. And it's through that automation, it's through that intelligence that you are able to hold people accountable. I love the Cavalli group, and Cassie talked about them. As soon as they became a VistaDash customer, guess what? I'm copied on every Car Wars weekly and daily roll-up. And he was saying, as accountability is saying, if you see anything, if you can help us here, here's our measurements. You're a vendor, you're an industry leader, I want you to be part of this discussion of measurement. One of the other things that I'm an advocate for is Conversica. I just did a webinar on that, and The Conversica for Service piece was really interesting. I just want to share a stat. So Conversica for Service goes into the DMS, looks at the customer history, and starts to message them to get them in for a service. Now, some of you have lifecycle marketing, which is not what we're talking about. Most of you are using some direct mail that no one reads, or emails that they definitely rarely react to, and you call that's my customer retention and lifecycle marketing campaign. Some of you are using more sophisticated tools that are doing multi-channel, client command, outsell, and others are doing something a little bit more robust. But this was a very interesting thing. I want you to think about it. Because lead handling applies to service. That it took an average of 8 outreaches for this one dealer, 8 messages from the Conversica AI to get people to respond. And here's what they did. They looked at the number, so they say, how does this impact revenue? And here's how they measured it. We don't count any service revenue unless the person responded, right? Just because we sent a message out, they're not taking credit for that. So, did the person respond, and did the person make an appointment through that tool? Meaning, yes, I'm ready. And they calculate the revenue. The numbers are unbelievable. But here was the point. Even with a BDC model, even with a cradle-to-grave model, I'm not sure how the service BDC is set up. That blew my mind that it took 8 different messages. Say, well, Brian, we have, the CRM just firing shit and firing, okay. I'm talking about when these people responded with the AI, they were apologetic. They were like this. Hey, sorry I haven't been getting back to you, but I've been really busy and I'd like to come in for a service thing. Or, hey, thanks for reminding me, I've been really... That's a huge difference. So when we're talking about BDC structures, if we know that 30% of all the leads will never get a two-way response, why aren't we letting AI take the first shot, and then when someone raises their hand, give it to that live person? That's my viewpoint. Any comments from the panel on that thinking that we need, as Denise Chuddy mentioned, the tango, using chatbots and technology to engage and answer basic questions, and then moving it to a live operator in real time to make sure that we create that great customer experience? Are we afraid to embrace that? Is this just...
I can tell you why I know it works. It's conversation driven. It's not an epsilon bullshit little $2.99 wheel alignment ad that I don't want to click on.
Note to video editor, please remove the name epsilon from the video. Oh, no, go ahead.
And that's the problem. Everybody's using the same data integration in the DMS, and that's the outbound for every OEM. And so they're not aligned with when the person came to service, when they didn't, what they're doing, and then they're just sending this out in a batch. And then it's whatever my service specials are on my webpage are the same ones that are on these outbound emailers. So when Conversica comes in, or my BDC, and writes out specifically, you're due for service, let's chat about it, that's when you start the conversation. It's not presenting an offer, and that's why that's going to work. And then from a labor cost standpoint, of course, if I can imagine, we do about 200 ROs a day, times 7. Now you got 1,000 a week minimum. Yeah, I mean, imagine all the hours times 8 to get every single person to actually respond. I mean, I need a whole BDC just for service, no matter what, just for the RO count. So, I mean, it blows up really quick. So yeah, I think that would make the most sense.
And that's why I love, when I was visiting the Contact at Once, this conversational commerce, that if we stopped, spraying and praying, if we really started conversations, if we are inspecting what we're saying on the phone, if we're really using technology to lower our labor costs, we're going to be more successful. We just have a few minutes before we bring up the Reviver Auto team. Anyone on the panel? Is there one thing that you've recently done, implemented, or observed that has helped with your lead handling process, or at a dealer's? Anything that comes to mind that maybe is new?
We always have a theme each year when we do our training, and the theme this year is the battle for now. And the biggest thing you can do, and it's never changed, it's very simple, to increase the amount of people you'll contact is your ability to quickly respond to them. And we have just got this focus from the top to the very bottom that when a form submission comes in or that call comes in, we have to answer it as quickly as possible. We need to answer the question. If you don't, that's the number one thing you'll do to turn them off and close that gate. And we've seen a tremendous surge in the amount of people we're contacting and leads and whatnot this year as a result.
Yeah, and Brett shared on the panel yesterday the difference between using a technology like call drip or fast ring on the lead forms. He was seeing somewhere 80% connect rates versus 20% connect rates if you waited 10 minutes. So that seems to reinforce that. For everyone's here, listen, there's no single thing that's going to fix your lead handling process if you have broken leadership.
Amen.
Yep.
And if you believe that you can create a top-down leadership style that takes these customers seriously, then you're going to need the technology to inspect your processes. If you're too cheap to have the leadership like Kevin has, if you're too cheap to do call tracking, if you're too cheap to use AI in automotive, get the hell out of the business. Mm-hmm. Because here's the bottom line. Everything we saw here was building trust, responding, validating, and taking the friction out. Shit, if we're not even answering the phone or answering their questions, get out of the business. Mm-hmm. And I say that lovingly because I'm passionate about your success and everyone here. Would you give our panelists a big round of applause? Thank you, Glenn.